Hey everyone, welcome to EQcast. I'm your host, Christy Pritchard. This is where you can find unscripted conversations with authentic humans around spirituality, healing, plant medicine, and whatever else we feel like talking about. I'm really excited to welcome a new friend and connection that I've made recently, Jodi Sharp. She's a talented artist from Montreal, Canada, who makes products to support you in your meditation and yoga practice. 3 years of hard work, she manifested a life that she knew was possible and now creates products to support you in doing the same. She makes one-of-a-kind stained glass meditation objects and printed clothing, and her art intends to help you engage in a more profound connection to the universe and manifest the life of your dreams. I'd like to welcome Jodi Sharp to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Christy. I'm so happy to be here.
Excellent. I'm super excited that we connected.
Me too.
I love how the universe works. It's just like,
especially with the internet these days, like we hack on it all the time, but it's incredible that we can meet people from around the globe and connect and have these amazing conversations. I'm so grateful.
Exactly. Me too. And you can also kind of, and I hate to say this, but it's true because our profiles are just like a bit of our souls, you know, like 100%. I put a lot of myself out there. And so when you click on someone's thing and they have their little write up and their photos and you're like, bam.
Yeah. Humans. Yeah.
Exactly. You can kind of tell immediately. And that's why I like to be as myself as I can online. Is just because, no holds barred. I swear a lot on my things and I have myself out there. I'm a sassy little bee, so I don't hide that. And I really liked your style and so talented. Oh my goodness.
Thank you. That means so much.
Yeah, I fell in love with your pieces and I'm really excited to shop around. I'll just kind of boast about you a little bit. She makes beautiful little stained glass. You have like feathers and different kind of ornamental, but it's jewelry and it's stained glass, which is
I have some jewelry on right now too.
Oh my God, those are the ones I was looking at. The moon. And your leggings, which I'm obsessed with. So they're eco-friendly and I kind of want to hear about those. This isn't a paid ad, by the way. I just really like
thank you. I mean, the encouragement really means so much. You never know when you're just alone creating whether stuff is meaningful to people or not. And so it really, really matters when people tell me that it's working for them because I make art for other people. It's not just for me. Otherwise, I would just be alone in my room doing it. And so thank you so much. It really does mean a lot when people tell me that it works for them.
Of course. And so that kind of brings us to what we're going to talk about today, because you found your little niche and what you wanted to do, and you started following your passion. And I know other people are really itching to do the same. We're kind of stuck in this like monotonous 9 to 5 because we feel like we have to be. Yeah. But that's not the only option out there. You know, if you're driven and if you have something that you're passionate about, there's a way to get there. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of want to talk about your process and like how you discovered what it is that you love to do and how you took the first steps. And like both of us can just talk about how we are finding our own soul's calling.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, first off, I think that all of us really have unique gifts to give the world. Like There's only one of us in all of time and our expression is completely unique. And it's a disservice to ourselves and our lives when we're not really being true to ourselves and who we are and what we have to offer. I think that living a fulfilled life really means doing the work to figure out what your purpose is and what your gift is to give the world.
Yes.
Right. It's like, it's so hard to do and it's scary and we don't know where to start. And we're surrounded by this world around us that tells us it's too hard or it's not possible to us or that people who do it are just lucky. But it really is just a series of steps that anyone can do and get to the point where they want to. It's just a series of habits for anyone.
Exactly. And, Sorry, continue. Being in Zoom.
I didn't grow up in, just to give a little background, I didn't grow up in a place that was supportive of my life or my passion at all. I grew up in a very, very rough home that was very religious in a way that was very toxic. I mean, religion can be really beautiful and useful to a lot of people, but the environment I grew up in was very rough. And I really had this thing driven into me that my whole goal in life was to be a proper woman, be a silent wife, get married, have children, not be career focused, like not be creative. Like this was supposed to be what my life was designed for. And it was this very, very fundamental space that was imposed on me. And so people often look at my life and they say, you're so lucky to be doing what you love. But the fact is, it's a journey all the time to make this choice. And
Exactly.
I grew up with a lot less than a lot of people have, and I
Yeah.
still had to make the choice to get there. So just to say that anyone can do it if they make the choice.
You're hitting on that really key word choice. We're confronted with choices every single day, which
Yeah.
direction to go, which connection to make, which one to leave behind, which dream to follow. And if we ignore the internal signs that are pointing us to a certain direction
Yeah.
and the nudges that we get from the universe, from our intuition, whatever it is, we're really doing ourselves a disservice in the long run. So with you, and when you were coming out of the toxicity of religion and all of that, how did you end up shaping yourself and your beliefs into finding your own empowerment and going through that process?
I mean, the first thing was that it's all trial and error.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people, when they think of artists in particular, think about the idea that artists are born, they're not made. But
Yeah.
it's not really true.
No,
Like,
I don't think it's true at even at all.
at
I think that
all.
takes hard work. Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone has the creative spirit in them, and everyone has the capacity to do beautiful and wonderful things. And so I think the very first thing that people need to do if they're trying to figure out what their passion is or their life purpose is just explore, just
Yeah.
trial and error, and know
Yeah.
that
That's
you'll fail at a bunch of stuff.
yeah.
Like,
Case I've done it a bunch.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't think that I would be an artist when I was younger. I was really into horses. I was
Oh,
so passionate about them. I was just
kids are
like,
passionate about horses. It is
"Oh,
like a
man."
full on thing.
Yeah, I was working ranches and
Oh.
competing, and I was like, I thought this would be like my thing,
Yeah.
and then I ended up in a situation where it costs a lot of money to work with horses, and it wasn't feasible. And so I started kind of playing with other things, and I'd always been kind of creative and drawn to visual space. And so I just started playing in different art classes and stuff, and then really found this joy. And you know, along the way, there's hundreds of other things that I explored also. But
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing was just testing a lot of stuff and really seeing where your biggest joy lies, because that's what passion is, right?
And
It's
that feeling of joy
oh
too, and to like tap into that and know when it arrives and
yeah,
really follow that. Like that's
mhm,
something we're not even really taught that much about is what our feelings
totally.
really feel like. Like what does joy
Mhm.
really feel like? That excited little kid on like Christmas morning because it's
Oh
'tis the
man,
season. But like that kind
totally.
of bliss, and I
Mhm.
think that kind of with adulthood too, that gets numbed down and
Yeah,
dumbed down with so many responsibilities and so much
obligations. Yeah.
on obligations, exactly,
Mhm.
and stress and comparison and all that stuff that we forget what joy feels like, and I think that
Absolutely.
maybe is a great starting point is to be like, "Hey,
Yeah.
what does joy feel like again?" Like,
Yeah.
let's get to the basics here. I feel like we missed that a bunch.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. I mean, I didn't even think of that, but when I was coming out of such a rough home, I went through a lot of therapy. And
Yeah,
one of the
nice.
things that was really challenging was I couldn't feel my emotions because I had been shoved down my whole life. And like, if any of you have ever heard of a feelings wheel, look it up.
Oh, yes, I am. I had a lot of
Absolutely.
fun. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
because every time I'm trying to express myself, like, to my partner or to whoever,
Yeah.
I have it saved in my favorites now on my phone to revert back at, like, how am I feeling? Because sometimes I need a visual to
Yeah.
see, because I know how it feels in my body in different
Yeah.
areas, but I don't know how to describe it other than, "I feel a pain in my stomach and it's moving up
Exactly.
to my
I
throat."
feel like this.
What is that pain?
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah. So much, yes. Holy throat, that was perfect. You nailed how I feel a lot of the time.
Me too. Me too.
Oh, wow. Not alone in that. So should have that on the feelings wheel. Too funny. And exactly, we're that's all we know is that it feels
Mhm.
icky, it feels bad, or it feels "Ugh," like it just,
Yeah.
but and having that wheel, it's like, okay, my feels like, oh, and then you get to kind of narrow it down.
Mhm.
Because it goes
Absolutely.
through like the main feelings and then it brings it into more descriptive words towards the center, if I'm not mistaken. I can look it up right
Yeah.
now.
Totally. Yeah.
Like certain I won't. But yeah, so I think we went down a bit of a rabbit hole, but I love rabbit holes, so that's great. So yeah,
I mean,
so
the point was to
finding your
focus
joy.
on the
Yeah.
feelings. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to know, to really be honest about how what you're doing is affecting you. Because
Yeah.
we all know when we've worked that shitty job that makes us feel horrible about going in every day. And we often can't separate that feeling of obligation. Then we're
I've been there.
surrounded by other people who really think that that's the way that you're supposed to live. And I think that's kind of the second thing. If the first thing is follow your joy and follow your bliss, like the second thing is to really surround yourself with the right people. When people are mired in this place of fear, like fear is a really, really good thing. It keeps us safe. It's really, really important. And when we start testing things and we're like, does this feel good to me? What if I did this? The first thing that's ever going to happen is this fear. And your body's saying, oh, you can't do that. You're never going to make money at that. You're never going to be able to support your family or have a real life, or you're going to end up on the street. Like your fear is just going to blow up. Right.
Yeah.
And if you have people around you who aren't on the same journey of growth and desire for purpose and aren't supportive, then you're going to be like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this new thing. I feel really excited about it. And they'll be like, you are insane. You cannot do that. My sister started a jewelry business and she failed after a year and a half and is $20,000 in debt. Like that's all you're going to hear.
Encounter,
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's so sad that the limiting mindset that we have, and imposter syndrome too, that those kind of conversations end up breeding into our deep in our subconscious.
Totally.
And that's where imposter syndrome, I think, comes from, is it's just having those conversations, and then it gets embedded into our psyche, and then it's there, and it's really hard to get rid of. And that only comes from their fear and their lack of belief too. Like no one's saying this to hurt us purposely. At least I don't like to believe that. And I think that that's just the way that humanity has been, like we came from names like blacksmith and whatever smith and like all these things, because like just do something functional, do something that makes money and pays the bills, rather than stepping outside of the framework of what society's been and really hearing what makes your heart sing, and that's something that I think we're really stepping into now.
For sure.
I think
for the first
finding those little steps. Yeah, for the first time in human history. Everyone else who did this prior to us, they were like witches or insane or like locked up. Or now that they're gone, now that it's like so far back in the past, they're revered. But it took them being dead for 300 years to look at their work to be like, fuck yeah,
what a
you're on to something. There you go. You're really... So and I just really hope that it catches up with that time frame, ends up being at the same. We don't have to die, and then 100 years later, people are like, good job.
Yeah.
Like I hope that it can happen within the time that it's happening, if that makes sense. But,
I mean, I think the internet is a huge facilitator of that. Like not only are we in one of the first times in humanity where we're not directly connected to our work being our security and our safety. Like we're not farmers. We don't have to grow our own food that we eat every day. We suddenly have this space. And
mind you, we should, I think.
Yeah, I also agree with that, but that's a whole nother conversation. But also we have this like place of the internet, right? Where not only can we explore and meet other community and people to surround ourselves with, but we can actually start to find the niches that want to buy from us and want to support us. Like I couldn't have done what I do 15 years ago. Like it's brand new.
Yes.
Brand new. And
definitely.
I can't believe that I get to live in a time where I get to make my own business, market it for free. I mean, for free, billions of hours a week, but for free, and sell my work and make a living. Like I never thought that could be possible when I was younger. And suddenly we're in a stage where you can go build an app, you can go start a startup, you can like,
oh my goodness. You can be a working dog, but you don't get paid. I love how you just, Riley, please.
He wants his voice heard too.
You want to come here? Do you want to share your voice with YouTube? She's looking at me like, I kind of want to take a video of it and then interject it. Yeah, there'll be a little interlude of Peanut right now, what I'm looking at. Yeah. Anyhow, but yeah, we get to create our own voices and do our own thing. Does anybody want a toy? Sorry if this is just the podcast. I picked up a very phallic black double-edged sword. YouTube video
for the dog.
Details. Yes, for the dog. Just for the dog. Oh wow, that would definitely square peg round hole. Okay, lost track again. Peanut does this often in I don't think I can edit that one out though. So you guys are all stuck with that because we were saying something really important. So I'm not going to edit that. But continue.
I also got distracted by the dogs.
It was the double-edged black thing. You got distracted.
Yeah,
Let's
that's the
be
real
real.
distraction.
That's the real distraction. Yeah, but we're like getting into how it's changed now that we can do. And I had a question in my head while you were saying that, because how long have you been doing your jewelry business now then?
Well, this is relatively new. I was working as a large scale installation artist for festivals for about 13 or 15 years.
Amazing. I
Yeah.
don't
So,
suppose you've been to Shambhala or Base Coast.
oh yeah, absolutely. 100%. But
We don't know
done
each other
art
very well.
installations
You
as
can't
well.
tell everyone.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been to Shambhala for probably, I think I went 8, 9 years, and way
Nice.
back in like 2004
Oh yeah. We
or
would have crossed
something.
that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's beautiful. I'm wondering.
Yeah.
We're not Facebook friends yet, but we should be,
We will
because
be.
that's where we can
Yeah.
tell the mutual friends. That's where that comes. That's the only reason we use
Absolutely.
Facebook anymore. Awesome. And so what were some of your larger installations?
So what I normally did is I built a lot of domes, and then on the interior of the domes, I would have some sort of ritual space where people could come participate in an action to kind of connect with their spirituality deeper in a different way. So I did that for a very long time. I traveled all over North America doing that, and I really loved it. It's not very good money, but it was amazingly like a connected space with people. And I was really enjoying it, but people started kind of approaching me about wanting my individual art in their homes. They were like, these things are successful, they're useful for me. I love this sort of ritual, but it's only here. It only exists in this festival space, and then it's gone. And I don't have anything to remember it by. And so I started making these small objects.
Yeah.
Mostly started in stained glass, and then they just started taking off. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, and now we can't be doing things like that in festivals anymore. So my entire business shifted completely
So this is
just to doing
recent. Oh,
objects.
wow.
Yeah,
So
so
see, the
super recent.
pandemic might have just been a positive shift. I think it was for quite a few people as far as that's concerned.
Yeah.
Getting to recreate or create something new even,
Mhm.
or recreate something that they've done.
Yeah.
And are you preferring being able, because now you're mobile, now you get to kind of travel around a lot more, which you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different thing. I really loved being on the road with festivals, but it was also mid-October. I would be at a different event every weekend. And
Yeah.
so it was a very exciting life, but it's also very exhausting to keep that pace of life as well. And it is nice to kind of be a little bit more mature and have product available and have like staff at some points in time and like be building stock and be able to kind of live wherever and sell that stock from wherever I'm at.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing about passion, right? Is that it's constantly evolving.
I had that in my head
Yeah.
when we first decided our topic earlier today,
Yeah.
that I was like, mine has evolved a few
Oh,
times since
totally.
I was 20. And I was like, that needs to happen. I think
Mhm.
it's almost a necessity,
Yeah.
because we evolve so much as humans. And if we didn't, we would still be stuck doing the exact same thing
Yeah.
that we were doing and passionate about 20 years ago. And
Absolutely.
I'm just reinventing myself currently now with this podcast, which I love doing more than anything I've done thus far.
Nice.
And it's just, and it's such a representation of where I'm at
Yeah.
entirely.
Yeah. And
And
it's always
I would
building
still,
on itself, right?
exactly.
Mhm.
Like mine has always been some kind of service. Like when I had my media company in my 30s, it was helping small businesses. So I was still
Mhm.
helping. I was still watching things grow and a part of that process, which I absolutely loved. But now I'm watching spirituality grow and conversations grow, and watching
Mm.
and people forming these beautiful ideas even mid conversation, and they'll have epiphanies. And that's a part of growth too. And
Yeah.
that's a lot more exciting to me now than, but that's just the part of the evolution, and you have to evolve with where you're at and like
Absolutely.
what you're currently doing. And yeah. And so how would you, I'm trying to think how I even would have, but I'm going to ask you because obviously we didn't plan any of these. But how would you go about, maybe because you also help people finding their purpose as a part of
Mhm.
your art? And so if someone is kind of in a midlife, like crazy zone of everything seems to be falling apart, which I think everyone's in that state right
Yeah.
now,
For
personally,
real.
it's for real.
Yeah.
And so how would you go about being like, okay, these are maybe a couple of steps that you could take to finding your voice and
Yeah.
to listening to it, you know?
Well, I think it like goes back to step one the whole way through the process. It's just trial and error. and
Yes, for
finding
sure.
your joy, like
Yeah,
listening to that
definitely. But
intuition
what would
and
the piece after that be? Sorry.
finding that peace after that. I guess,
The actionable steps, I guess. It's
yeah,
kind of
I guess
exciting.
the big thing for me would be treating it as daily exercise, and it's kind of like building up resilience training. So
Yeah, I
doing
like that.
something every
Yeah.
day
Yeah.
that like when people think about artists, they often think about people who are kind of like flaky and we run by intuition and we just sit here and we wait for God
Manifest and it just
and then
drops
we
in our
just
lap. Yeah.
yeah, it just drops in our lap and we do it and then it's perfect. Like that's not how that's never successful. I mean, it might be for a very, very teeny amount of people in the world, but let's be frank, that's not gonna work for most of us.
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing is just doing it as a habit every single day, no matter what it is that you're poking at or you're trying. Like for me, I go into the studio every day. I do something creative every single day. I handle
Consistent
aspects
effort.
of my business every single day. Like there's never a day where I wake up and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it today. And then I don't. I often wake up and don't want to do it. And I still go and I'll do it. And when I start to do it, especially with the creative process, I'll be like, oh, I'm not inspired. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no ideas. And then I'll go in and I'll start the action and I'll start poking at stuff. And then suddenly ideas start coming and you start grasping onto that flow of life, which is what the intuition is, right? And
Yeah.
into like that flow isn't going to find you unless you're already receptive to it. And you can't be receptive to it if you're just like sitting around being like
Numbing out or
numbing out.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And
Exactly.
so
Oh, I love that. Yes.
yeah. So it's really
Absolutely.
it's about that daily exercise and then also about getting yourself really comfortable with pain. Like let's be honest, following your passion is really hard. Like
Yes.
it is
So uncomfortable.
so uncomfortable
Yeah.
and you
It goes
have
against
to
everything that we've learned. It's going
Mhm.
against everything that we've been taught.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
Outside of like comfort zone for sure. And so how do you get past your pain to
I mean,
that awkward stage?
yeah. Same thing as
Incubation, I guess.
daily exercise.
Yeah.
Like when something comes up that scares me, like I don't like talking to people. I'm an introvert. These types of things every time before I sit down to do them, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, you can do this. You're good. You know what you're doing. You know what you're
I'm
talking about.
choosing doing this and I agree with you. I before this I had to walk a few blocks and some days you're just not in the mood, just like you
Mhm.
said. And even with everything that all the projects I have going on right now as well, I'm just not in the mood sometimes, but I do force myself to do it because
Exactly.
and sometimes to get in the flow. And if I don't, I'll move on to another kind of project or whatever
Yeah.
it is that I'm working
Sure.
on. But yeah, sometimes just a nice brisk walk too really helps me kind of
Mhm.
get the blood moving and then
Yeah.
I can clear my head. And
Yeah.
then I'm just like, okay,
Mhm.
this is going to be brilliant. Like not brilliant isn't brilliant, but it's going to be like just beautiful.
Yeah.
And it
It's
just
gonna be
takes
what
that.
it is, and it's a step
Yeah.
forward.
And it's just all like whether they're mess ups or whatever, it's all still a part of the process and learning and
Absolutely.
going through that whole evolution stage within a microcosm,
Mm.
and so for me, I just kind of have to remind myself like it all is just unfolding and
Yeah.
just allow and go and have a great time. Like, why are you stressing out?
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a really great point that prevents almost everyone on the planet from not moving towards their passion is perfectionism. And
Yeah. Oh
Brene
god.
Brown,
Huge. I bring her up all the time
amazing
in the
human.
podcast. Yeah.
Oh man, she's so incredible. And she
Yes,
really
she is.
talks about perfectionism as being this armor we wear because if we're perfect, then we can't get criticized and we don't have to be vulnerable because like being vulnerable is hard. It doesn't matter who you are. It is a terrible, terrifying feeling. And
Yeah.
and following your passion is super, super vulnerable.
It's
And we
vulnerable.
have this tendency to be like, everything has to be perfect before we can put it out into the world because we can't have anyone criticize it because it's us, it's our identity, right?
Yeah.
And so we get stuck in this trap of perfectionism and we don't put anything out in the world because it's not perfect yet and we are too afraid to feel that criticism. And so I think that's part of what I mean when I mean resilience training is you do it and you put it out there and it doesn't have to be perfect and you just move on. And then the
And it
next time
doesn't have
it's
to be
better,
perfect for everyone else either. Like you're
right?
not going to be perfect for everybody. That is
Yeah,
an impossibility.
totally.
It actually is an impossibility.
Yeah.
Just
And
because
most
you are
people don't
not
even care. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Exactly. Yeah.
that is,
Stop thinking of yourself so highly that
yeah,
everyone's gonna give a shit.
that people
They
care what I'm
don't.
doing. Like,
Yeah.
that's one of the greatest reliefs of my life. It's learning that
And people
people
don't give
don't
a
care
shit.
about me half as much as they think they do. Like, it's awesome. It's so
Totally
freeing.
liberating. It's so liberating. Nobody gives a fuck. I
Right?
am free. Yes. No.
And also, like, it's also not my right to judge my work. There's this amazing quote by Martha Graham that I cannot remember the entirety of, but she's talking about the creative practice. And one of the parts of the quote is that it's not your right to judge whether the work is good or not. It's your job to just be a channel, be open, put it out in the world. Because if you don't, then
Perfect.
it will be lost for all of time and no one will ever have it. And like, it's
That's
such a beautiful quote. I have it on my studio wall for that reason, because there's so many pieces of art too that I've made, and I make it and I'm like, what did I do? Like, I hate this thing. Like, I hate it. And I have this feeling of wanting to throw it in the garbage and just like
yeah. Toss
never
it
put
back
it out.
out.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed to like, I don't want people to see that I made this. And then I'll put it out there and there will be someone out there who is like, oh my God, this is the thing I've been looking for the whole
Exactly.
time. And I'm like, really? Like I
I love it.
felt something when I was making it, but then I made
And
it and I
that's
was
the
like,
thing. You're channeling that person's
exactly.
desire, and that one person's higher self
Exactly.
was like, yo,
Totally.
person really wants that. And,
Mhm.
if you're open, if you're an open channel, you'll get that information. And whether or not you
Exactly.
understand where that's coming from or not is a whole other story, but
Yeah,
just do it. Like,
totally.
yeah, just
And
be
that's the
open.
point. Like, it's not your job to know those things, and it's not your job to control every aspect of the process. It is your job to do it and to
Yeah.
put it out into the world and let it go and move on and do something else. Like,
Fuck yeah. I love that. Yeah, that's definitely
yeah.
speaking my language. I have a person in my life right now who's trying to create something or is creating something. And I think I actually talked about this on a previous podcast. I don't know if it made it to air or not, and I do this as well. When I see something or if I create something, I'm like, oh, it's very similar to that other person. And I'll immediately, or it's very
Mhm.
similar to this. And I'll
Yeah.
immediately think like
Ugh,
it's
not
not
as good.
yeah, it's not as good, or it's just like I shouldn't
Yeah.
put it out there because it's so
Yeah.
similar to that is another
Mhm.
thing. It's like I shouldn't I'll seem like I'm copying them or something, even though I would have seen it after the
Mhm.
fact and you've already
Yep.
created it and you're like, oh crap. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that's just the same thing pretty much. But it's also getting over the who the fuck cares as long as it's not played. And if you created it authentically
Totally.
from your own being and your own self, and
Yeah.
then you find out and discover later that something else is very similar, who the fuck cares? Just like
Exactly.
that was created with your own pieces in there.
Yeah.
There are elements of you in that. And no matter even if you did see it first, that still has bits of you in it as
Totally
well.
in it. It's still
Yeah.
unique to you.
Oh,
There's
great.
have you read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
Ooh, I have
It's
not.
so
I'm
good.
excited
She
for a new
talks
book.
all about finding your passion and finding your creativity. And there's this whole chapter she has in there on that, which was just
Awesome.
so beautifully put, where she kind of talks about the collective unconscious and that ideas have their own life and that the ideas want to be birthed and they want to be out there. And it has nothing to do with us as creators or people following our passion or living our lives. These,
Yeah.
these things kind of have a life of their own and they're just bouncing around the world waiting for someone to grab onto that idea and put it into
Yes,
real life. And if she's
absolutely.
like, if you don't do it, it's going to bounce to
It's
someone
gonna
else
go to somebody else.
and they're going to
Yeah.
do it, and you're going to see it and you'll be like, oh, like
I
I
had
totally
to
had an idea. Like,
I'm at that
why
time
did I
app ideas,
do
app ideas and like technology things. I'm like, oh man, I totally thought of this 5 years
it?
ago. But that's funny too, because I was also listening to a podcast recently where they talked about how we are a collective consciousness. And since we are a collective consciousness, it's pretty obvious that we're going to have similar ideas and thought
Totally.
waves. And just
Yeah.
to tie into what that author was saying is like, yeah, you're going to pull out a little something from the atmosphere that's going to
Mhm.
resonate. And somebody else is obviously going to, how many billions of people do we have here? So,
Yeah.
it's not just only going to be you that's going to resonate with that collective consciousness idea. And it's just, but still put your own unique spin on it. Like, still
Yeah.
be your own, get really centered into how you can make something slightly better or
Yeah.
different or unique.
Totally.
There's so
And
many
like
ways.
comparison is the thief of joy. When we look at other people and we compare ourselves to them, that is the biggest stunter of anything to do with the creative process or finding your passion.
Yeah.
Like I have a rule for myself when I'm going in the studio to not look at social media before I do, because
Oh,
I will get
smart.
so
And so what happens
distracted.
to you when you do that?
I look at things and then I'm like, like, I kind of had that idea, or oh my God, that's so much better. Or like, I totally get lost in this place of someone else being their beautiful, magical selves, and that
Yeah.
I'm not feeling magical this morning. And
Yeah, and
I
you're
can't,
not.
like, yeah, like we're seeing people's highlight reels, right? And
Yeah.
so we're seeing the best of their best all of the time. We don't see any of the crud. And so much of what happens when you're trying to live this fulfilled life is really being in the crud.
Yeah.
And so when we compare ourselves to other people's highlight reels, then we start to feel completely disempowered, and we're not like able to get to that point of production, right?
Yeah, that's a great point to not look at social media, especially before that, when that creative process hits. I just should look at it less just in general because I find myself, I don't know, just mundanely getting distracted from
Yeah.
what is supposed to be my path
Yeah.
and it just takes, so not only do we all do the comparisonitis thing, but also it's a distraction tactic.
Totally.
It's a great tool to get out there and to network, but at the same time, if not utilized effectively, it just totally dials us back so many.
Absolutely.
There should be a course. Okay, here, somebody make a course how to stay on track with social media. Would you distract me for a little bit with that? I just need more distraction. But it's true.
Well,
Like I
that's the thing, right? It can either be a beautiful, beautiful tool, or it can be a numbing out agent. And
yes,
I think the thing that is crazy about this world right now is because we have more free time than any other generation in the history of the planet. We
especially
also
during the big P.
Exactly. And we also aren't being taught on how to follow our passions or like live fulfilled lives or be societally engaged. Like all of a sudden, we have all of this time, and then we have more numbing out tools than ever before. And so we're bored, we're not engaged in our lives, we're not like having a lot of social time. And so we have this time and we're like, well, what am I going to do with it? And the answer is nothing. I'm going to stare at the flickering fire of social media and just
Yeah.
like turn my brain off, which don't get me wrong, can be really useful sometimes when you're like,
Yeah, it has a time and a place and
yeah.
moderation. Everything does. I mean, it has
Mhm.
been shown to have that meditative effect, but at the same juncture, it's like you could take that energy or lack of energy that you're putting into staring blankly at something, or you can take it and make it a little bit more purposeful. I mean, I still like doing both, but you could also
Mhm.
make it more purposeful by taking that time when you're just kind of staring into oblivion to be like, hey, I could be staring into the oblivion of my inner consciousness and with intention. I mean, I have a hard time really taking away from my chill out time to do
Yeah.
that, but I really wish I had an alarm on my TV to be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, it's time for you to go."
We all do. We all, you
Right?
know, I think one of the things that really helps me with that was uh, like separating my intentional social media from my personal social media. So
Yeah.
I have a business account and a personal account for both my Instagram and my Facebook. And I made a rule for myself several years ago that I follow mostly only clients on my business
Yeah.
Instagram. So clients or business connections. I'm
Yeah.
not following other artists on there. I'm not following other businesses.
I
I'm
see.
not following like things like travel blogs or things that I like to look at.
Just
I have that space, and it is my following list is completely people that I'm interacting with from my heart in a business way. And so I spend a lot of time on Instagram because it's a huge platform for me for my business, and I'm really grateful for it. But I made it so that I'm not getting distracted by other people's creative outputs into the world. Like
that
I'm
makes
there
total
to
sense.
interact with my clients and my business colleagues and to do my job. And which is a very inspiring job. It's supporting people in their spiritual practice, it's inspiring them, it's engaging with them. And so I only have that space for that. And then in those times where I'm like, you know what? I just want to stare at a news feed. I go over to my personal accounts, which I'm almost never on
Yeah.
anymore. And
Yeah.
then I can look at all the things that are cool and inspiring and like all that sort of stuff. And so it's really helpful to separate because especially in this new era of where we're building all of our own jobs, if we don't have boundaries, around our work time and our intention and our meditation time, like, especially because a bunch of us are working from home, then it all just gets muddled together and we tend to hit the lowest common denominator, which is numbing out and being tired and overwhelmed by all the information that is coming into our brains. And so having a container has been a really useful way to
But
approach
yeah.
it.
And I like how you have no other artists on there. Cause for me personally on my podcast page, I have a lot of other podcasters, which I
Mhm.
find what we do collaborate though. So
Totally.
it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But I also I don't try and meld in the podcasters on my personal page and stuff like that because I just like to keep my
Mhm.
it's just friends on there,
Yeah.
and I just follow people that I know and that's about it. And it's easier when it's like that. And then I can focus on purely business stuff with my Instagram, but it's also still overwhelming with the amount of time spent.
Totally.
But that's something I just kind of have to accept with time that it comes with this line of work and that in order for me to continue to network and make friends on there, that's just it is a part of it. And most of it's
Yeah.
really enjoyable, to be honest. Especially I get to meet wonderful people like you and like look at all your beautiful stuff. And so I do love that part of it. It just I find sometimes that I don't delegate my time. Maybe that's another thing is delegating certain
Yeah.
allotted times. Like I
Totally.
read Tim Ferriss, 10-hour work week. And he was
Yeah.
like, I do not check my emails. Like every time somebody emails me, he's like, I only do it in the
Mhm.
mornings and in the afternoons. And if
Yeah.
I could really dial that in, that would make my productivity higher. And I could be following the thing that I love to do
Totally.
more like more astutely.
Yeah.
And so I'm needing that structure. So once you get past the finding your joy and when you get to following it and
Mhm.
numbing or not numbing out, nullifying the voices that are telling you that you can't do it.
Yeah.
And then it's really getting structure around, okay, how do I make this a reality? How do I
For sure.
take this beautiful joy and my passion and how do I construct it into something that I can monetize and construct it
Mhm.
into something that I'm going to want to continue to do down the line and how it's just feasible to do without getting burnout because
Totally.
burnout's huge.
Yeah.
Like it's a thing.
And that's another thing that I mean, I've definitely utilized in my life. I've done so many courses and read so many books and all that jazz. Like I am a huge advocate for getting educated around whatever you need to do. Like Tim Ferriss, his efficiency strategies have changed my life. Like the
Yeah.
like
I
that
need to
book, I
reread
read it.
10-hour work week
Oh
for
man, I
sure.
read it like
Yeah.
15
Awesome.
years ago and I
Yeah.
like it
It
just
did.
it blew my mind, and I still use a bunch of those practices today.
Cool.
And I mean I could say on this podcast like all the things that I went through to build my business, but that wouldn't be useful to other people trying to
Yeah,
find their
no, and
passion,
everyone's
right?
got their
And
own process. Yeah. It's
exactly.
gonna
But
be something else different for
mhm.
everybody. So that
But
makes
the
sense.
thing about the internet that's so amazing is that people are out there sharing all of this like crazy for paid
Absolutely.
and for free. Like if
Yeah.
no matter what you do, you can start tomorrow by just like Googling, how do I this?
Yeah. This fill in
And
the
there'll be
blank, fill in your
someone,
joy.
yeah, there'll be someone
You
who
could
has
probably even
a
Google how to
hundred
find
times
my joy.
content. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Like
Yeah.
it is so incredible that we live in this age where not only
Information.
are we able to do this, but people are sharing information on how like now when I choose to add something to my business or when I want to go down a different sort of path and try this thing, I no longer start from scratch and I'm like, oh, what am I gonna do? I'm like, okay, who else has done this?
Yeah, someone laid
Let's
the
flood it.
groundwork, like,
What are
it's
my steps?
there.
And
Yeah,
then all of a sudden you have this jump start to figuring out how to get this to be really successful. And you're not just doing trial and error all of the
yeah.
time and
I
failing
mean,
from
I
time
still
to
end
time.
up doing trial and error,
Totally. But
but
it's
I
with
mean,
less.
but yeah, the groundwork is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm so grateful to especially with podcasting too, and I'm sure with
Mhm.
jewelry making as well. And so like pretty much everything I can think of, there is some kind of groundwork. Crypto, I've been
Yeah.
learning. There's so much groundwork out there. I'm so grateful for and I make sure that they know too. I'm like, thank you
Mhm.
so much. You've officially changed my life.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
yeah,
I
you
mean,
deserve
marketing, all of my marketing, I never got taught that in school. Like I have
right.
2 bachelor's degrees and a master's in arts, and I didn't have a single business course. Not one. It blows my mind that I never got taught that in 11
Yeah,
years of schooling. But
a lot of
like I got out of that and then we're like, come on, like people have to be able to make a living at this. It's a lie that
yeah,
artists are always going to be poor and broke. Like
yeah,
it's not true because I
yeah.
see artists out there who are successful and are making money and are doing well. And I'm
And
like,
it's
so there's
not just
gotta be a
dumb
series
luck.
of steps.
Yeah.
It's not just dumb luck.
Yeah.
right? And so it was like, oh, you know what they do? They do marketing.
Yeah.
They find their niche. They like find the clients that want to work with them. How do I do that? And then all of a sudden on the internet, there's just these billions and billions of people who have put out that information.
Yeah.
And I can then learn on how to do those things and start a business from scratch, which is incredible in this
Super
era
incredible.
that
Yeah.
you can just do that for very little money. And that's another thing that people, when they think about following their passion, they're like, it's going to be so expensive. I don't have a bunch of savings saved up to go back to school or
I
like
was
do
just
this
gonna
thing
say,
or
yeah,
that
go back
thing.
to school is not a necessity. It's not a
Totally
requirement. Yeah.
not a requirement. And you don't have to like sometimes it's really good to jump off the cliff and just be like, I'm doing this, sink or swim. Sometimes that's useful. But you really also don't have to do that. You can keep
No.
your day job
Yeah,
and start poking at your passion. You can,
exactly.
you can take a course at night. You can look on something on a oh, sorry, my light just died.
It's okay. I guess it's fine. I didn't even notice. That's funny. But you can take a night course or do whatever you've got to do. Like a little bit of time per day. Like we were saying earlier, when you take that actionable step every
Mhm.
single day, no matter
Totally.
when it is, if it's after your day job or
Yeah.
what have you, in the morning, if you're a morning person, you lucky soul, then
Yeah.
do it then.
I
I don't know.
mean,
I struggle. I do it, but I hate it. But hate's a strong word. We just don't need eye to eye. Anyhow, but yes, find your time that works for you and take that time. And where you could be numbing out, you could also be creating something that
yeah.
you're truly passionate about. And I think people are becoming more and more aware of this now.
Mhm.
It's just taking the conversations about it really help. Like I talk to my friends about it often and they're miserable. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
there's a way to do things. And I jumped off the cliff and, I've yet to monetize it, but it comes with time and
Yeah.
just be prepared for that. And that's another thing. Have a little piggy bank. If you don't have a day job, then like kind
Mhm.
of save up for that and be
Yeah.
prepared for that to be an option too. But just give it a shot. And I know for a fact, because I've waited a really long time to do things in my past. And I was like, oh, if I would have had the courage to do it prior, then I might be further ahead now. And my only
Well, you
regret, and
100% would be.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't even call it a regret, but my only, if I could slightly adjust something in my life, it might
Mhm.
have been to have less fear, have more courage, and just have
Totally.
tried sooner and
Yeah.
put myself out there more. And I still
Yeah.
could use that advice every day. Like I
Right.
still have a hard time getting on
You know?
lives on Instagram and doing these
Mhm.
things and having even though I have a podcast and YouTube channel, there's something about getting on Instagram and talking into my phone that just like I haven't gotten there yet. So
Yeah.
you do it.
Totally.
You do a great job. You're on there, right? Like you have photos of yourself. Like I'm barely on my Instagram. I have like 5 photos of me on
Yeah.
there. And
I mean, I think that's another thing that just came from learning marketing too, is that people don't want products, they want a connection. And
exactly.
I am my most valuable asset. I'm my art is me and I'm
Yeah.
putting that out into the world. And I am not an extrovert. I do not enjoy having my face all over everything. There are sometimes I'm editing the thousandth photo of myself and I'm so tired of my face. Like it's not something that like I'm not an ego driven person. I
Yeah.
don't have my face as my branding because I want to connect.
Yeah. And you're connecting.
And
Exactly.
and that's one of those things where you have to do it and you do it every day and you get over it and you have to put yourself out there and you have to be vulnerable. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you want to live a passionate, fulfilled life, you have to get over being vulnerable. And that means every single day doing that little thing that scares you and doing it tomorrow. And it's probably not going to be good. And then you're going to do it the next day and it's probably not going to be that much better. And like 10 years down the line, you're going to be a freaking rock star at it.
Awesome. Yeah,
Right.
totally. It's so
Right.
true. Who knows? Maybe even 10 months, maybe even 10 days. It's really
Yeah.
hard to say, but it
Yeah.
is taking that step. And as much as I know that, and as much as I can say that here, I'm still not currently doing it. Like I said,
Mhm.
like I'm not on Instagram doing the things to really get my voice out there, but it is hard and it's getting over that fear. So my next move personally is going to be, how do I come up with that kind of, I guess, that confidence. Confidence isn't my issue. How do I get over that uncomfortability? It's
Mhm.
uncomfortableness. I'm
Yeah.
uncomfortable with doing it because
Totally.
I don't like my face all over the place either. I'm
Yeah.
much like you. I'm an ambivert. I'm an intra, extrovert, introvert. So we're called ambiverts. But when I get out there, I can and I'm fine. but it's the getting me out there. It's the
Mhm.
hard part. And so
Yeah.
it's finding that courage that is going to be something that I'm going to work on. I've had it in my head for months to do it,
Right.
but
I mean,
meditation.
that's how,
Yeah.
but also it's like, it's again, that perfectionism and the
Yes.
fact that we think that it needs to be perfect and it needs to be big. Like,
Yeah.
like I think the biggest thing that I've learned in my life is baby steps. Like, I want to do this thing. I'm going to do this today. And it might be
Yeah.
tiny and might be small. And then tomorrow I'm going to do this. And as soon as we make ourselves think of this thing, we're like, you know what I need to do? I need to go on Instagram on a Facebook Live and I need to do a 2 hour talk and it needs to be freaking amazing. And then you're
Because
like,
my
I'm not
eyes
gonna
are
do
just like,
that. Yeah. You're like, I'm not
no.
gonna do that.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Let's
But
do it
it's
two,
like,
yeah, 2 minutes. What if
yeah.
I get on
Or
there
like
even for
30
20 seconds?
seconds. Hey,
Yeah,
good
exactly.
morning. I like
Yeah,
you. The
yeah.
end.
Wait. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, for sure. And as much as I even know that too, even me personally, who does this kind of stuff. So if anyone's out there wondering if they can market themselves or not, like, and it does come down to just choices, like
Yeah.
we talked about at the very beginning of the podcast, and it is a choice. And for me, I've gotten by without it so far, but my choices are starting to evolve. And I'm like, this is my choice to start getting
Yeah.
comfortable and get courageous and just kind of get out there. And I know I did one last week for the first time. And I was like, that was fine. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like, so what? Crazy. So
Why am I
I'm
so
sure
weird
that
about
yeah.
it?
So I'm sure that'll happen more and more. And
Yeah.
no matter what you choose to, it doesn't have to be that your face has to be everywhere. That's not even a
No,
necessity right now.
not at all.
Yeah. So it's just, it
That's
all
that
depends on your
works for my
creativity.
business. It
Yeah,
might not work
totally.
for someone
And it works
else's.
for mine,
Like,
but
yeah,
it works for mine, but it doesn't necessarily have to be for everyone's. I
yeah,
just want people to really be diving in and thinking about what lights their fire. Like,
yeah,
what lights a match under your ass to get you off the couch? What is
yeah.
it?
And I think the
Like,
thing is, like, when we're following that inspiration and we're following that joy, the biggest thing that makes me realize I need to do something is I feel afraid about it.
yeah,
When
totally. Heck
like,
yes.
for real.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
when I'm hearing that little voice inside of me that's like, "Hey, you should put your face out there." And I'm like, "I don't wanna do that." Like
Like, I gotta do that because I don't wanna. I have
yeah,
to.
and then it's
So
like,
true.
"Oh, no. Now that I've realized that it freaks me out, that means
Oh
I have to
no.
do it."
TikTok. Oh no. Oh no.
Uh-huh.
I just had that running through my head.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I hope I can be smart enough to edit that in there right now because that's the voice that I get every time I'm like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, no, I shouldn't do that.
yeah.
Oh
But
man.
that's the
Yeah.
thing is it's like, it's when we follow our passion and what we're meant to do, we have to be brave. It's just
Yeah.
like being healthy. It's like exercise. No one wants to wake up at 6 a.m. and go to the gym. Everyone wants a six pack.
Yeah.
The habit is a totally different thing. And we have to commit to doing that thing that's hard if we're going to have the type of life that we want.
And the
And
results. Yeah.
yeah. And the thing about stuff like this too is that when you start to build a habit of building the life that you want, you get into these spaces and you realize that there's very little competition because
Yeah.
people don't want to do the work to make a life
Yeah.
like
That's
this,
true.
like people, we don't want to get up and go to the gym. We just don't. But when you
Yeah.
start a habit and they do it every day, and then you start talking, you're like not letting yourself argue yourself out of it. It's not a discussion. Like it's non-negotiable
Yeah.
to get up and do your thing, to do your job,
And
to
before you
have
know it, it
something
becomes
today.
routine and you like kind
Totally.
of rely on it.
And then you're like, oh, but I'm gonna do it today and I'm
Yeah.
gonna do it
Yeah.
tomorrow.
And
And
every
this is how
time.
we build lives that we want.
Exactly.
And when people look at my life and they're like, oh, you're so lucky, like luck has literally nothing to do it. Like I'm perseverant. That's the pretty much the only quality I have. Like I'm not even that creative half the time. I commit to doing what I need to do to live the life that I want to live. And like that's the one skill that you really need to figure out anything in your life. If you can persevere, then all the information is available to you. Like figuring out your intuition is available to you. It's just a matter of that doing it. Like
Yeah.
that choice.
Absolutely.
Like I'm
That
going to
choice.
live the life that I want.
Exactly. And like you said, listening to that intuition too is huge. That's key. And a lot of us aren't doing that. So that would be my biggest takeaway too, is diving into that intuition and kind of nullifying that fear and building up that courage every day and taking those tiny little baby steps. Our intuition does have a lot to tell us, though, and so does our fear. And I think that was a great point that you made is like, as soon as you're afraid to do something, frickin' do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely get out there and do it. That's great takeaways today. Awesome.
Awesome.
How long have we been chatting for? Jesus.
It's been almost an hour. I think we hit our mark.
I feel like it at all. I love it when conversations happen like that. It's the absolute best. I was like, my battery's almost dying. I don't like
Well, my light died halfway through.
We've abolished all electricity. But it's been a great conversation and so worth it. So that was fabulous. Well, I'm really excited to go on your website and do some shopping. I'm going to do it just after Christmas because I'm all shopped out. I have an allotted amount of shopping that's allowed, but I've been perusing and I'm like bookmarked a bunch. So why don't you tell everyone where they can find you?
So my website is jodisharp.ca. And if you follow me on Instagram, I'm very responsive to emails and stuff. I love to chat with people there. It's jodi.sharp.art. And so come find me there, come connect. My favorite thing about making art is connecting with people. So please
I can vouch for that because that's how we ended up talking. I was like, holy crap, I'm in love with your stuff. My family was huge into stained glass. My stepmom and my dad, both who passed, they both had some amazing stained glass pieces. My stepdad's he has this 11.5-foot lady. She's made it of soldered glass. She's nailed to a cross.
Oh my God, you'll have to send me
please. I have it. He left it to me. And
oh my God.
And she lights up. So when I saw your stained glass, and I don't think I mentioned that before, that it has such an emotional tie to me, but, and my stepmom loved doing it as well. She had it all over her place. And,
that's so nice.
Yes. So totally. I can't wait to get some of your pieces. So anyways, now that I'm going to tear up a little, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation and sharing all of your insights and everything. You've had so many nuggets of gold wisdom that I'm really excited to share with the world. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Christy, and thank you, your audience. I hope I meet some of you. So
absolutely. Go find this woman. She is a gift. Thank you so much, everyone. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe wherever you're listening to this. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please give me a review. I am lacking reviews because I don't harass people enough to do them. So that would be great. And if you're on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and follow and all that stuff. And yeah, thanks again, Jodi. And we will see you guys next week. Bye.